I am Etta Collins-Coleman, Vice President of Communications at Common Sense Media, and we are so enthusiastic about this panel of dynamic leaders in policy accountability and standing up for our families in the digital age. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen right now to just briefly introduce yourselves. If you could take 30 seconds to introduce yourself and your background, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Perfect. Am I on? Great to see you, everybody. I'm Kristen Lewis. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Aura. We are an online safety company, and we focus specifically on child safety and well-being.
Oh, handing over.
Well, Hello, everybody. My name's Tim Levy, Managing Director of Qoria. We're a digital safety and wellbeing provider. And I think you'll probably all be very interested in the progress of the social media ban and age verification laws which happen in Australia, and I think I've got some controversial things to say about that topic.
Good morning. Can I start every week with a bunch of people who are trying to protect kids online? This is so fun. So fun to be with all of you. I'm Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan. I'm the Assemblymember from the 16th Assembly District, which is just over the Bay Bridge in the East Bay. And I chair our Privacy and Consumer Protection Committee in the California State Assembly, which means I oversee all AI and tech policy, including child safety online.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Chapman. I'm CEO of Parent Collective, Inc., which is fighting for online safety for children. I'm also an angel parent, Sammy Chapman's dad.
Thank you. And Sam, we'll start with you. Tell us about your son, Sammy, and why you're leading this important effort.
So Sammy was a bright high school student, a football player, intended on being the world's first trillionaire, and a drug dealer reached out to him on Snapchat through the quick ad feature and offered him a counterfeit medication, which was delivered to our house like a pizza after we were asleep, and his brother found him dead on the floor the next day from fentanyl poisoning. And I reached out to Snapchat CEO, Evan Spiegel, told him that there's something called third-party safety software out there, and if he would integrate with it, there would be a message for parents that would save the lives of children like Sammy. And he said he would not allow for that because they scrape our children's data and they use it for targeted advertising, and it's a very valuable asset of theirs. So we are pushing for Sammy's Law in Congress, in the House and the Senate, and it requires that any social media or gaming platform with children as users open a link to the third-party safety software industry and will allow parents to parent online again.
And what's the status of the law right now?
Thank you. So we just made it through the House Committee on Energy and Commerce with a bipartisan vote, the only one of the day. And that means on to the floor of the House. And we just announced introducing the bill also in a bipartisan way in the Senate today. So
that's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing Sammy's story and his legacy. Assemblymember, you're a leader on this issue, as we all well know. Tell us about the bill you co-authored with AG Rob Bonta and Governor Newsom signed in October of last year.
So, and I want to thank Common Sense Media, because you guys were super critical to getting that law passed. And thank you for sharing Sammy's story. I chair the committee where many of the angel parents come and testify about their children's story online, and there are too many of you. And honestly, we would let no other industry harm as many children as we let the tech industry harm without pulling back products, and it's time that we stop that and that we put our kids first. But your advocacy makes that possible. So thank you. So we authored AB 56, which is a bill that will put social media warning labels onto social media. So when our children sign on to social media, they will get a warning label that takes 25% of the screen that tells them that if they spend excessive time online, that it could cause harm to their mental health. It then will repeat every hour after they reach 3 hours, which is when the research shows they start to have those mental health harms, and will take over the entire screen at 3 hours, and will remind them that now they are starting to have negative mental health harms. And that does a couple critical things, but the most important thing it does is it reframes this conversation to make it a public health conversation. We are harming children's health with these products. And by putting a label on that we have used for cigarettes, for other things that we know harm children's health, we're reframing the conversation to say, this isn't about us versus the tech companies. This is about us protecting our children as they age and making sure that their mental health is intact, that they survive their youth, that they thrive, and that they have the childhood they deserve. And it also educates all the families who need a little bit more education about what these tools are doing to the brains of our young children.
What are the next steps that you would like to see made in these regulations within the state? We know not much is happening on the federal level, right? So what are you doing right now in terms of making sure this is happening in California and writ large around the nation?
I have lots of dreams, Etta, about what I could do here in California. Last year, the governor vetoed my chatbot safety legislation. That legislation would have ensured that every chatbot put in front of California's children, and let's be clear, they are now in every classroom in California, was safe by design. So that you could not release a chatbot to California children unless you knew it couldn't coach them in suicide, it couldn't teach them to have eating disordered behavior, it couldn't teach them to engage in mass shootings, and that bill was vetoed. So we're at it. We're not giving up. We are going to see chatbot legislation because we know that it is the next front of our children's attention. And right now, it will do those things that are harming our children. And so companies have to be responsible when they release these products to our kids. But one of the things I'm most excited about this year is actually we really want to see something similar to the E-Safety Commission in Australia come to play in California. We want a regulatory entity that is consumer-facing, that is charged with protecting families online, so that if you start to see violations of California's laws, right now, if there is a nude image of you online, you have a right to get it taken down. Do you know what to do if a platform isn't doing that? No. We should be serving you as a state. You should be able to call us and say, look, I need help. This company isn't doing right by me or my children. And we should be regulators acting in the interest of the public to make sure these tech companies are responsible. And so that effort is underway, and I think it would be the most critical thing we do to move us forward in an age where online engagement is the next frontier. And part of that will be looking at how we protect our kids online by ensuring that under 16-year-old youth don't have access to platforms that are addictive and harmful, and instead we're incentivizing online spaces that are safe and healthy.
We also passed SB 976 last year, and that makes the addictive algorithms illegal in the state of California. Netflix has appealed all the way to the Ninth Circuit Court here in California. We're waiting for a ruling, but if the Ninth Circuit rules in our favor, which will be the third time that this law has won, these dangerous algorithms will be illegal in California.
And that was the amazing Senator Skinner in partnership with Common Sense Media.
That's wonderful. Thank you for highlighting that. Kristen, off to you. So Aura focuses on making sure parents can get a handle, right, on the device itself, and it keeps an eye on the children's online lives more broadly. Can you share the approach? It's pretty sophisticated. Tell us what Aura's tech is looking for when it's monitoring online activity, and then tell us what you think this can achieve as well.
Sure. So Aura started in more of the traditional parental controls business, so child safety, child identity protection, and those things are very important, especially when kids are young, being able to set time limits, being able to block certain types of content, that's very important. Our CEO had a very personal experience where his teenage daughter, even with parental controls in place, if these kids are spending 2 hours on Instagram every day, for you that might be fine, for another child that might be a really horrific experience. And it was really an eye-opening moment for us around, that next level deeper around what's actually happening on the other side of that screen. It's much, much deeper than how much time they're spending online and what specific app they're using. It's really unique and personal to each child. How is that activity, impacting their overall well-being? Is it interfering with their sleep? And how do parents and kids get more information? I think the things that you guys are stating are amazing, right? So that those warnings can be more prominent. But how do we really help? The teens are struggling too, not just the parents, around feeling so much pressure to be online all the time, to understand the jokes that are being told, to be on the group chat. So we saw this opportunity to provide a different type of solution, working with clinical psychologists who could really help us correlate, what are the types of things that we need to look for, and knowing that every single child has sort of a different threshold for what works for them, what kind of time online can they spend and still be healthy, still go to sleep at night. And really a big part of our solution is around creating a baseline that is unique to each child, and then really spotting changes in behavior and anomalies over time. So if you have a child who's been, really active and social on, you name the forum, Instagram, any of those things, and all of a sudden they're really withdrawing and it's more doom scrolling and their tone's becoming more negative. We really wanted to figure out how do we, without being spyware and without, parents are so overwhelmed feeling like they have to read every message on their kid's phone and they never know when they're done checking. They don't even know what they're checking for to see if the kid's okay. So we really wanted to, just bring the things that they need to focus on to the surface and really foster more of a connection. The whole concept of parental controls was sort of predicated on this one way, have the parent, enforce something for the child. And we felt like there's a huge opportunity to really give kids the tools that they need to, learn to self-manage, self-regulate, because this tech is not going away. And to your point, they really have no idea that these algorithms are actually purpose-built to get them hooked and create, keep coming back. So that's sort of how we got here.
That's right. I know it's something that many of us in the room struggle with or challenged with, so really appreciate the opportunity to have that tech and the parental controls there and the guidance from Aura. So thank you so much for that. And Tim, off to you. Your company also offers device and network controls, and school systems are a major user. You have said that a proactive, collaborative approach to child online safety is critical. What does that look like for you?
So the thing that got me and there's a few of us from Australia involved in this is we felt like there's really important conversations about kids' safety and privacy and agency and algorithms and kind of top-down approaches. But very few people talk about parents and the critical role of parents. I don't see anyone advocating for empowering parents to make the decisions that are right for them in these terrifically difficult circumstances. And so that's kind of what got us into this space. And then as we got into it, we realised that the safety world, all these well-meaning people from educators to technology providers and regulators, all operating in silos. And Jim was talking previously about the village raising a child. The village can't raise a child today because you've got parental control settings in Instagram that can't be accessed easily by a parent who's got the same challenge in TikTok and Telegram and all this. It's impossible. It's an impossible challenge for a parent to be a full-time assisted administrator to look after all these platforms and devices that the kids engage with. And then you think about schools, which is the bigger part of our business. Schools spend a ton of money in this country to protect their networks, protect their devices, and to be compliant with the simple regulations here. But then the kid just turns up at school with a mobile phone, hotspots from their device, and bypass those millions of dollars of infrastructure. They're the gaps that kids fall through. And so that's what our business is focused on. The siloed approach to safety is creating these gaps where harms are arising, and that's what our business is committed to. So what we do uniquely is we have a platform. Everyone says they've got a platform. We've got a platform that allows schools to discharge their obligations, internet filtering, managing devices, classroom controls, more recently digital monitoring, interventions looking for kids that are in immediate harm's way, but also the ability to extend that power to mum and dad. So if a school's willing, they can hand control to parents of that school's device after school, and even further, put similar technology on their personal device, just like Aura does, so that mum and dad have a fighting chance of at least gatekeeping their kids into platforms that they're comfortable with, that their child can go to. Now, imagine that world, where you've got the school and the parents collaborating on a single platform to gate the internet, and imagine if Sammy's Law comes to pass and safety providers like us or others can have meaningful moderation of what kids are doing inside those encrypted worlds. So I see a future as possible, but man, we need the regulators to step up and pass this law. In fact, more broadly, demand interoperability across all these different silos, because again, that's where the harms are arising.
Absolutely. There's hope, right?
There is
we have to have hope. Australia recently instituted a blanket ban or delay on social media for everyone under 16. And can you share your take? And I would love to have each of you, I know Assemblymember and Sam, you have maybe some context you'd like to share around this ban in Australia. But Tim, if you could start off with what's your take on how it's rolling out and what it will achieve?
It's a hot take. Honestly, I think right now it's creating more harm than it's reducing. And it's the safety industry, those kind of well-meaning educators and child psychologists who have been advocating for safety for a long time, they were essentially ignored in the construct of this policy. Bans are always problematic, particularly bans where the gatekeeping technology is flawed. I was part of the government's evaluation process of age verification technology, and there was an 85% success rate with an 18-month tolerance. Basically, that means it doesn't work. If you're expecting your child to be blocked out of their access for Instagram when they're 15, it's not going to happen. And all the results of recent research is that's exactly the case. So kids aren't being blocked from accessing social media. But what's even worse is that imagine it works and they're getting more difficult access to Instagram. Well, they're going to Roblox, they're going to Telegram, they're going to places that are darker. And the fear that we as people passionate about this space had when this policy was being developed is that we'll end up in exactly what's happening today, which is there is an expectation, there is a belief now of the Australian parent community that the internet's safe. Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, has got it. We're fixed. And there was a YouGov survey that came out just a couple of days ago, and I think it's 80% of parents think that the internet is now safer. And yet kids are surveying kids, and they're being completely unaffected by the ban. So blocking kids' access to social media apps is very problematic. The technology just does not work to the community's expectations, despite what the industry says. And then kids are moving to darker places, and that's a flawed policy. So this kind of sensorial top-down approach that looks like a big headline is actually creating situations where kids are finding their way into harm's way, and more terrifyingly, they're downloading VPN apps, which is harvesting their data and putting them in really tricky places. So I'm frustrated because it's a really good idea. Of course we should gate kids from accessing these dangerous platforms and moderate their activity in them, but the way it's been implemented without proper control of the devices and things like what Sammy's law purports to achieve, it's just really problematic. And I hate to say it, but I'm kind of relieved in the sense that the UK government has decided not to pursue that policy.
Thank you. Assemblymember and Sam, would you like to dive in a little bit deeper here as well?
No, I appreciate that perspective because I think that my concern around the policy is that the definitions of where children are not allowed in the Australia law is, frankly, from my perspective, narrow. They're not allowed in places like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, but they can go spend all day talking to a chat bot, which feels antisocial and not healthy either. So we really need to be thinking from a global perspective of what is it we want our children to be achieving in their formative years, and how do we achieve that? And I think that's why, as we think about our policy moving forward, and this is something we're talking about in California, I really want to frame it as, okay, let's say kids aren't allowed in harmful online spaces and incentivize positive online spaces, because we can't keep kids offline. It's just today's day and age. And so ensuring that we're sort of pushing companies to a place of providing a tool for our children that is safe, that is non-addictive, that doesn't have the algorithms, that is causing them to doom scroll and feel the things they're feeling, but instead allows them to connect in a non-addictive, positive way, I think is where we all want to go. I'm a parent of teenagers, and I will tell you that my daughter spends a lot of time in the evening on FaceTime with her girlfriends, chatting, picking out their outfits. That's actually fantastic. So she is in a virtual space having a real interaction with her friends that I think is helping her develop positive social skills. And so we can't say online spaces are bad. We just need to figure out what are they and how do we drive an economy that pushes those spaces and disincentivizes and bans our kids from the spaces that are harmful. But I think to the point that was made, if we write a law with definitions that are too strict, they're just going to end up in places that are darker and more problematic, and we have to be really careful to avoid that.
Well, these companies, what they do is they work with the lawmakers to write holes in the laws that make them ineffective, and that most of the legislation that actually makes it through has got some sort of trick hidden inside that allows for the children to still get hurt. And that's what happened in Australia. But if you ask me, should we ban social media for children under 16? I say yes. I wish I'd moved off grid and never let him touch a smartphone. So, you don't want to be me, and you would love for Section 230C of the Communications Decency Act to be revised or reversed. And I believe that this policy, if properly implemented, could save a lot of lives and a lot of brain cells.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that, Sam. Kristen, I'm going to go to you with what's your top piece of advice to parents, caregivers, family members, anyone who's out there in the trenches every single day trying to help a child or a teen navigate online life?
I think, being aware and sort of intentional that this is the very first generation of kids, and we're the first generation of parents that is growing up with this situation. So the average age that kids are getting their first tablet is 2 years old. 2 years old. It's so, I think, easy, at least for me personally, and I think for so many of the parents I talk to, we cannot empathize. Like, we did not grow up in a world where we had the option of being on a device and having all of these places that we could go online and all of these, virtual places to talk to friends. I mean, can you imagine? And truly, if you think about that, how many times have people in this room said to yourself or to friends, like, oh gosh, I'm so glad social media didn't exist when I was in high school. So I think having that empathy and really having active conversations with your kids around, how is it going? How are you feeling about it? Like, when we have our teen panels, it's just so pervasive that teens are feeling like they also want tools, and they wish that, this happened, in my house a few weeks ago. My 9-year-old invited a friend over, and the friend brought an iPad, and my son was devastated because he was like, no, I have a friend over. I don't want to play the iPad. So it's creating attention for them too. And I think for parents, really being there and trying to understand, but bi-directionally, right? How are you feeling about this? How can I help? It's really the first time we're all going through it together, and they need help. And if the kids feel like they can come to you without shame to ask what something is, that is going to benefit everybody. If they feel like they have to hide it or they have to evade, then that situation gets even worse.
I'm curious to see how you handled that situation with the play date and the iPad. Can you share?
So I knew that this boy that had come over, his mom was out of town and the babysitter had sent him, and so it was probably a true accident, because I think that would be unexpected. It was a Saturday. But I did say, hey, Shep, when we have friends over, we play outside, and they got through it, but he came back in and asked 4 or 5 times. So it was not easy, and I think my son was probably a little bit embarrassed. And that if they had both really wanted to play, I am not rigid enough. I definitely would have been like, why don't you guys do 30 minutes here and then go? But in that situation, my son really didn't want to, and it was just, we decided to shut it down.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And can you all share just a little bit of what you do in your daily lives when it comes to Assemblymember? I know you have 3 children. We've talked about this ad nauseum, about what you do to either shut down, jailbreak, or the phones, and to make sure that your children aren't on the platforms. Can you just share a little bit personally?
So I happen to be married to a man who got his computer science degree at Berkeley, so I benefit from real tech support in my household that not everyone has. So when my kids got their first phone, we now give lessons because the phone was completely locked down. So they could text, call, and they had the library app. That's all they could do. The browser doesn't work on their phone. So they have a phone that allows them to engage in things we find are healthy and productive. And then I really believe in the training wheels approach. Again, I didn't grow up this way, so I may be screwing it up as much as the next mom. But the way I see it is the things I did grow up with that could create harm as an adult. My mom wanted me to experiment at home when I was in the safety of our house, where she could let me make mistakes and be there to catch me when I fell. And so I actually we have, freedom comes with responsibility. When you show me responsibility, we open up more of this world to you, and then we see how that goes. And so we have really taken that approach. I have a 11, 14, and 16-year-old. They're all on different parts of this journey. And I will tell you that my 14-year-old doesn't want social media. She did want to start to access the browser for certain things, doing searches, et cetera. But she has said to me, I don't want social media. I actually don't want, she kind of knows that it's addictive. Her friends are not on it. So there seems to be a shift happening there, which is a really positive one. But I also think that, so our other safety plan at home is that the computer is in the kitchen. And so YouTube is the thing that we struggle with the most in my house. I'm sure there are a lot of parents in the room who feel that way. My kids are not on Instagram and those platforms because I don't see a benefit, but it's really hard to keep them off YouTube. My kids have learned to play chess. They've learned to become magicians. There actually is some content on there that's really positive. And so how do you then deal with the shorts, the negative content that you don't want them on? And so our way is that it's in the kitchen. Like my 6-year-old is watching videos and I'm listening to them and we pause them. Whoa, what did he just say? Did we fact check that? Like, how is that affecting you? Do we think he's trying to radicalize you? Like, what are these online spaces trying to do to our brains? And so we have those conversations so that he can navigate the online world in a way that I feel like is critical and healthy, because we can't keep our kids from it. That's not a reality. And so that's what I do as a parent. Again, doing my best here, team. I'm sure I'm screwing it up. And I'm putting money into the therapy fund.
At Common Sense Media, we do have K through 12 digital literacy and well-being curriculum available on our website. We have these simple carpool conversations, which are the cutest, almost like podcasts, like snippets you can listen to in the car that has prompts teaching your children about, what is critical thinking? How do you hint about misinformation? What discernment? I've heard folks say, what discernment do you need to use to make sure what you're looking at, what you're reviewing, what you're reading, what you're hearing and watching is real or not? And so check out our website to find the digital literacy and well-being curriculum. Our education outreach team are amazing. They built this curriculum from the ground up. They're educators and talk and speak with educators all the time across the country. And so check it out to see what possible conversations you can have with your own children as well. I know it's almost time to wrap up. And so, Tim, I wanted to go to you about what is the most important thing each and every one of us can do to keep the young people in our lives safe and ultimately change this picture that we're all talking about today.
I think Reverend Wilson nailed it this morning when he was talking about kids being seen. I'd probably label it as kids being loved. And the best expression of that is what in our business we call ABC, access controls, the basic hygiene, which you were talking about, the access controls, limiting what they can access. Boundaries, they need to be clear on what their boundaries is, and finally communication. That's the best expression of love you can give them. And this isn't just words. Like all the research is showing, an engaged parent delivers better educational outcomes, better well-being, mental health outcomes, and we're clearly seeing it in our data, the better online safety outcomes as well. And we're also seeing schools that engage with these sorts of technologies have better outcomes in terms of mental health and safety as well. So ultimately, I think it's an expression of love that kids know that they're being cared for, know that we're there, we're watching, we've got a careful eye. I think that's the difference. And in my experience with parental controls, the best thing that happened, Aura does it, our product does it, is it notifies me when my child downloads an app. And that's a moment, a really important moment that you can have a conversation with your child, or watching a video and you can have that really important conversation. They're the things that make the real difference.
And then can you take us through what happens next once it acknowledges that the app has been downloaded?
Well, then, depending on the tool, you can block that app. You can then provide your child access to that app for limited periods of time. With platforms like YouTube, we can actually influence the content that's available inside that platform, and that's the ultimate expression of what Sammy's Law is trying to achieve. So there are use cases, there are examples of the perfect scenario, gating your kids into certain apps and providing a moderated experience. If that was ubiquitous across the internet, we'd be having much more valuable conversations. So much of our conversations that we'd like to have with kids are stuck in the mire of logistics and hygiene. But that's how it works in those apps.
Appreciate that. Thank you. We're going to talk about call to action. We're all here. What action can each of us take after this panel? And so I'll start with you, Sam. What would these are such complicated issues. There's no one solution, right? And we're hearing that today with all the different opportunities and options out there. But if you could share one piece or pieces of advice, an idea with the parents and caregivers and family members in this room, or anyone who has children in their lives that they care about, what would it be?
Well, I would say download Aura or Quora. I think that the technology that's out there is very good. The profit motive of these companies is to keep our children safe. And if you want to know what's happening in this realm, look at the profit motive. The profit motive of the internet companies is to keep them online for as long as possible and as many of them as possible. The other thing is, as parents, don't give up on the courts. We found a way to get into the courthouse now. And we're doing product liability suits. You may have seen there are 2 trials going on in California Superior Court now. And I'm part of one with 65 families that lost a child via Snapchat to fentanyl poisoning. And because we're going at it by product liability, we've made it to trial. So there are 2 modern-day civil rights trials going on right here in California. And if any of these trials win, the platforms will clean up the next day because the liability will be absolutely incredible. So don't give up. Product liability suits will be popping out around the country as we win our lawsuits.
Assemblymember?
I'm sorry, before I answer the question, I just have to say 65 children just in this lawsuit alone. What other product do we let kill 65 children and remain on the market? It would be recalled. Every time I hear this, it makes my blood boil. So I just had to say that. It's 65 too many children. So my response is that find half the strength that Sam has. I don't know how these parents do it, but they take the pain that none of us can even imagine and they turn it into power. And we have that same power, but we are up against behemoths right now. And some days I feel like it's me versus the tech companies in Sacramento, and luckily I got Common Sense Media on my side. But we need all of you to win these battles, to win them in court, to win them in the halls of power, and we need you to be speaking for America's and California's children. They don't have as loud a voice as these tech companies have, spending $1 million on lobbyists. So get out there, use your voice, talk about what matters, find a way to engage, organize people to speak up and engage in these legislative battles, these lawsuits, whatever it is. One of the stories that kept me going recently was at the LA trial, there were very few seats. And the parents found out that the companies had actually paid people to come and take the seats. And so volunteers showed up and slept every night to get those seats for the parents that had been affected. And those volunteers just slept out there and took those seats and said, no, the parents are going to be sitting here. So find a way. You can make a difference, whether it's saving a seat for a parent who's lost a child or showing up to lobby your legislator, you can make a difference.
Tim, any lasting words? You said love and hope. We're talking about persistence as well. Those are some words that have been we've spoken today,
Yeah.
but any last call to action?
My last call would be to the regulators, and again, Sam inspires us all again when he talks essentially about the inherent incentives. The platforms that our kids are in, their incentives are not to protect kids and not to empower parents, and that has to be broken. So if I'm to call for anything, it's for regulators to think about empowering the community, empowering the people who are responsible for those kids, parents and schools, empower them with the tools that generally exist today, but they're just made very, very difficult to use.
Kristen?
So this is going to seem very specific, but based on what we're seeing in our data, talk to your kids about AI. My 9-year-old comes home from school, and even my 6-year-old, they're like, is that AI? Is that? And I ask them, like, what are your teachers talking to you about AI? What do you think AI is? And they don't actually know. But what we're seeing is that over the last 6 months, teens are talking with AI chatbots more than they are on social media now. And outlandishly exceeds the volume and length of conversations that they are having with real humans and messaging and other social apps. So it's very, very, very quickly becoming a predominant way that they are getting answers to questions, that they are learning to communicate. And I think we as adults are all navigating the new AI world too. So I think there's an opportunity to, like, we look up riddles on ChatGPT together, and there's, I think, making sure that kids know and understand as early as possible, like, what they can trust, what they can't. If you are a lucky enough parent that you're like, my kid knows what they're doing, I don't need to be like monitoring. It's like, but these things are evolving so quickly, and I think we're seeing so often that a kid with really good intentions falls into the wrong place, and there's a million different ways that conversation can go sideways, and it's almost 2/3 of the conversations with AI chatbots we're seeing are like hypersexualized or hyperviolent role play. So it escalates really quickly.
It does, and we have made that recommendation that no one under 18 should ever use the AI social companion chatbots that are around. They are very dangerous. They are addictive, and they're not for anyone under 18. So I completely agree with you. And Assemblymember, I see you over there. I know you have some thoughts on this.
Yes, and they pop up. There's hundreds of new ones every day. So even if you block it or you have, it's like they find them.
Well, and the general use chatbots. Look, math homework time in my house is hard, guys. My kids have surpassed my math knowledge. We struggle through it, and AI is helping us. And so I think AI has really positive benefits, but they're also engaging in these sexual conversations on general use chatbots. It's not just the specialized ones. And so the same places they're going to get help with Algebra True is where they're going to have these conversations that are unhealthy, addictive, affecting their social abilities. And so we have to just be really careful to make sure that we're leading them into a future where they're using them in ways that benefit them and don't harm them.
Yep.
That's absolutely right. Our risk assessments and our research has found that, teens and children are depending on them. They're not going outside. They're not talking to their real friends in real life. They are committed to these social companions, AI social companions. So it's very dangerous. It's very good advice to learn with your children, to talk with your children about it so they have the critical thinking and can detect this misinformation and the wrong information that they're receiving on these AI chatbots. And so with that, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you to you for a great conversation.
Oh, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your support of Common Sense Media. Thank you for that amazing call to action. And also, there are postcards outside within the networking area where you can fill it in. It has a communication, a message already on there. You can fill it in and send it to your member of Congress. So please take action today. Please continue to have love, hope, and persistence, and let's get it done. Thanks, everyone.